G'day guys, I just wanted to make a video on installing an automatic locker, a front locker in a GU Nissan Patrol. This is what I went through and hopefully help someone out there. So you got to remove your front tyres, jack the car up and put some jack stands under it. Don't use bricks and wood and that kind of things. It's just going to fall over and hurt someone. Your diff sump plug at the bottom of the car, usually it's sheared, so just get a little file and file it out square and you'll fit a half-inch ratchet in there. It helps if you have quality tools. On the right is a cheap brand that I bought from Super Cheap Auto. Busted that pretty quickly in doing this job. On the left is a snap-on. If you can't afford snap-on, just buy a reliable brand, it'll save you time. So drain the oil out of your diff carrier. Undo 2 caliper bolts, 17mm they are, and then just cable tie that caliper out of the way. You don't need to disconnect completely, otherwise you've got to bleed it and that. Just cable tie it out of the way. These are the old automatic locking hubs. You've got to convert to manual when you put an auto locker in it. So yeah, I'm taking these 6 Allen key bolts out, and that's what it looks like behind. There's a C-clip, so you'll need some C-clip pliers. There's a steel washer and a copper washer. My instructions for my new manual hub said remove the steel washer, so I did. And yeah, behind that is a steel ring that can just be pulled out using your fingers or some pliers, and behind that is your bearing adjustment ring. There's a proper tool for it. The actual adjustment ring has a hole here and a hole here. You can use the tool, or you can get that tool on eBay for like $30, or just use a screwdriver and stick it in the hole and slowly wind it out because it's threaded onto the axle. Once you get that out, undo these. Don't undo these 6 bolts for the caliper. That's all one piece. So once you wind the bearing adjustment ring, the whole thing should just lift out. That's what it looks like after. Undo these 3 10mm bolts. There was a little plate here that being held in by those 3 bolts, so remove that. Then undo these 6 bolts here. It helps if you have a rattle gun to do that, because they're very tight. And that's what it looks like with that removed. Just on the right here, you'll see this is the end of your steering rod. You need to disconnect that on both sides of the car and remove that rod for later on when you get the carrier out. So undo that and get a hammer. And this plate here is being held in by a liquid gasket. You need to give it a few whacks and that'll break the liquid gasket. When you're putting it back in, you need to get some liquid gasket and put it back. So if you don't have any at this point, go and get some, whatever kind of liquid gasket you've got available. Doesn't really matter. Once you hit that a few times with a hammer, it should come straight out. Helps if you put a bit of cardboard down for your grease and oil and shit. That'll run out. This is under the car, so that's your diff carrier, and that's your drive shaft. You need to undo these 4 bolts and just cable tie the shaft out the way. You don't need to remove the entire shaft. Just cable tie it out the way so that you can access the carrier. Also on the driver's side, that's if you're in Australia, or your steering wheel's on the right hand side, remove that clip for the brake line because the steel brake line runs over the top of the carrier. You need to get it out of the way. Not completely, you just need to loosen it and push it out of the way. So I undid these 2 bolts above the carrier. This photo is taken from the driver's side as well. Undo those 2 bolts and push that brake line back a bit so your carrier can come out easily without wrecking the brake line. This is what the carrier looks like once it's removed. So that's your bearing cap and your crown wheel. Don't undo this gold coloured bolt here. That is attached to this hook which is holding this ring in place. Just remove these carrier bolts after you've marked it. So what you should do is make some unique marks on one side, and on the opposite side make some unique marks as well, and then undo those cap bolts, and this assembly will come out in one piece. And then once you've undone both sides, it'll look like this. I left the ends of the bearings in place so that I know which side they came from. The bearing is used to sitting in its own case that it's been in before, so just leave it like that and you should be right. It's up to you if you put your crown wheel back in the same groove that this is where your drive shaft connected. I like to put it back in the same groove, so I marked it. Once you've got it out, this is a top view of the crown wheel. So mark the plate and mark the crown wheel, and then undo all of these bolts with your rattle gun, or by hand if you want, but they're very tight. You're better off using a rattle gun. And once you've got them off, drop the crown wheel away and get yourself a punch. There is a metal, this is your cross shaft, and there is a cross pin holding it in place. You need to get a punch and put it through this side. It's important you put it through this side and punch the pin out that way, because the pin is only half the length of the hole. It's much easier to get the pin out through this side. It only comes out that one way, you know. And when you're putting it back in, you need to put it in through this side, and so that it holds that cross shaft in place. This is the Spartan locker assembly. I've already put the springs in the holes. Just follow, the instructions with your Spartan locker. They're very straightforward. Or if you've got a different type of locker, you follow those instructions to put it together. But with the Spartan, you put the springs in the holes and then the metal tabs. Push them down and then insert these temporary metal retainers. They'll be removed later on. You've got to do that to both sides, so that's sort of a before picture and that's after. You put one side plate, so your axle will feed through here. You put one side plate into the carrier like that. Also, you get these rings that come with your Spartan locker kit. There's a thick side and a thin side. The thin side needs to go towards where the teeth are on the Spartan locker. That's what it looks like in place. So you've got your axle piece, you've got a plate, the spring-loaded with the spring-loaded tabs in it, another plate with your tabs in it, and then another version of this plate is essentially inverted above it. It's important when you put these plates in that the metal tab is opposite an empty space, so that metal tab, once you pull these out, will act against that empty space and lock it in place. Once that's in place, use your fingers to get those rings with the thick and thin side, get them out of the way, push your cross shaft back in, and then hammer that pin back in place that I was talking about before. After that, it's just a matter of reassembling. So get your crown wheel and lift that back into place, clean your bolts and Loctite them, and we just use the rattle gun to rattle them in place. There may be a torque setting, but to be honest, we didn't torque them in place to a certain setting. We just used the rattle gun. It isn't that important, I don't think, for this section of the reassembly. We used a razor blade to get rid of the old gasket off the carrier, and we got a new gasket. You can reuse your old one if it's in good condition. We didn't apply any gasket glue to it. We just used the gasket because that's how it came out, and mine wasn't leaking. So if it isn't broken, don't fix it, just put it back how it was. That's what it looks like completely assembled. So the bearing caps are back on the side they came from. Obviously, because the bolts only go in one way and you haven't changed the position of that ring, then all your play should be the same as it was before, which is the important bit. If you accidentally remove that, you're going to have a different level of play in your bearing and you're going to have to get it probably professionally adjusted, because you don't have the tools for adjusting backlash and that kind of thing, which is a pain. So don't remove that bolt, just remember that. Just make sure all your marks line up when you put your caps back on, and that's about it. Once you're there, you just put the carrier back in, put your steering rod back on, you'll put your brake assembly all back together, and then put your new manual hubs on, and you're good to go. Hopefully this was helpful to people out there.